Marcus Chen had been working as a security guard at the Riverside Nuclear Research Facility for 8 years. Every morning, he would clock in at 6 a.m. sharp, grab his coffee from the break room, and begin his rounds through the sterile corridors of the massive complex. The job was routine, almost boring, but it paid well and provided excellent benefits for his family. On that fateful Tuesday morning in October, everything seemed normal. The autumn leaves were just beginning to turn golden outside the reinforced windows, and the usual hum of machinery filled the air. Marcus had just completed his first security check of the day when he noticed something unusual on the monitoring station in Sector 7. The radiation detection panel, which typically showed steady green lights across all zones, was displaying a series of amber warnings. Marcus frowned and leaned closer to the screen. In his 8 years on the job, he had never seen anything like this. The readings were climbing steadily, though they hadn't yet reached the red danger zone. Following protocol, Marcus immediately contacted Dr. Sarah Williams, the facility's chief safety officer. Dr. Williams was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who had dedicated her career to nuclear safety. When Marcus explained what he was seeing, her voice became tense over the radio. "Marcus, I need you to evacuate everyone from Sectors 6, 7, and 8 immediately," she said. "Do not ask questions, just get them out now. I'm on my way down." The urgency in her voice sent a chill down Marcus's spine. He had conducted evacuation drills dozens of times, but this felt different. This was real. Moving quickly but calmly, he began alerting the 53 people working in those sectors. Scientists, technicians, and maintenance workers looked up from their tasks with confusion as Marcus announced the immediate evacuation. Dr. Jennifer Park, a young nuclear physicist who had been working late on a critical experiment, protested loudly. "Marcus, we can't just stop now. We're in the middle of a breakthrough that could change everything. This experiment has taken months to set up." "Dr. Park, I'm sorry, but this is a direct order from Dr. Williams. Everyone needs to leave these sectors right now," Marcus replied firmly, his training kicking in despite his own growing anxiety. As the workers filed out of the affected areas, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something much bigger was happening. The radiation readings were continuing to climb, and he could see Dr. Williams rushing through the corridor with a team of emergency specialists, their faces grim with concern. Within 30 minutes, the entire facility was buzzing with activity. Emergency vehicles began arriving outside, their red and blue lights flashing against the concrete walls of the building. Marcus found himself coordinating with federal agents who seemed to appear out of nowhere, their black SUVs lined up in the parking lot like a scene from a movie. Agent Rodriguez, a stern-faced man from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, pulled Marcus aside for questioning. "Guard Chen, I need you to tell me exactly what you observed and at what time. Every detail matters." As Marcus recounted the morning's events, he noticed that more and more official vehicles were arriving. Fire trucks, hazmat teams, and unmarked government cars filled the usually quiet facility grounds. The local news vans were being kept at a distance by newly erected barriers, but Marcus could see reporters trying to get closer shots of the unfolding situation. Dr. Williams emerged from the affected sectors wearing full protective gear, her face pale behind the clear face shield. She immediately went into discussions with the federal agents, pointing at charts and speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Marcus caught fragments of their conversation, words like containment breach, unprecedented readings, and potential contamination zone. The reality of the situation began to sink in for Marcus. This wasn't just a minor safety concern or a false alarm. Something serious had happened, and he had been the first person to detect it. His hands began to shake slightly as he realized the implications of what those climbing radiation readings might mean for the facility, the surrounding community, and potentially thousands of people. By noon, the entire facility had been evacuated, except for essential emergency personnel. Marcus was asked to remain on site to assist with the ongoing investigation, but his family was contacted and advised to stay indoors as a precautionary measure. His wife, Linda, called him repeatedly, her voice filled with worry. "Marcus, the news is saying there might be some kind of nuclear incident. Are you safe? Should we leave town?" she asked during one of their brief phone conversations. "I honestly don't know yet, Linda. The experts are still figuring out what happened, Just stay home with the kids and keep the windows closed like they told you, Marcus replied, trying to sound calmer than he felt. As the day wore on, Marcus learned more about the severity of the situation. The radiation leak had been contained, but not before releasing a significant amount of radioactive material into the facility's ventilation system. The source appeared to be a critical failure in one of the experimental reactors, something that shouldn't have been possible according to all safety protocols. What worried the experts most was that the radiation signatures didn't match anything they had seen before. Dr. Williams confided in Marcus during a quiet moment that the readings suggested the presence of isotopes that weren't supposed to exist in their facility. This raised disturbing questions about what kind of research had actually been conducted in those sealed laboratories. As evening approached, Marcus realized that his routine morning discovery had set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. Federal investigators were now combing through years of facility records, trying to understand how such a dangerous situation had developed undetected. The implications were staggering, and Marcus found himself at the center of what was quickly becoming a national security incident. Standing in the empty parking lot as the sun set behind the facility's imposing structure, Marcus understood that nothing would ever be the same again. His simple job as a security guard had unexpectedly thrust him into a role he never wanted, as the person who had uncovered what authorities were already calling one of the most serious nuclear incidents in decades. The next morning brought chaos that Marcus had never imagined possible. When he arrived at the facility, the parking lot looked like a disaster movie set. White tents had been erected overnight, creating a temporary command center buzzing with activity. Men and women in hazmat suits moved between the tents with purposeful urgency, carrying equipment and documents that Marcus couldn't begin to identify. Agent Rodriguez approached Marcus as soon as he stepped out of his car. "Chen, we need you to walk us through every single detail of yesterday morning again. We've discovered some things that don't add up." Inside the main command tent, Marcus found himself surrounded by officials from agencies he'd never heard of. There were representatives from the Department of Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Centers for Disease Control, and several other organizations whose badges were deliberately obscured. The atmosphere was tense, almost electric, with unspoken urgency. Dr. Williams sat at a table covered with printouts and computer screens, looking like she hadn't slept all night. When she saw Marcus, she waved him over with a grim expression. "Marcus, we need to talk about what you saw on those monitors yesterday. The radiation readings you detected saved lives, but we're now dealing with something much more complex than a simple containment failure." She pulled up a series of charts on her laptop screen. The radiation signature patterns looked like nothing Marcus had ever seen during his safety training. Instead of the typical smooth curves he was familiar with, these readings showed sharp spikes and irregular patterns that seemed to defy normal physics. "What you're looking at," Dr. Williams explained, "is evidence that someone has been conducting unauthorized experiments in our facility. These isotope signatures don't match anything in our official research programs. We're dealing with materials that shouldn't exist, created through processes that were never approved." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. For 8 years, he had been walking through corridors where illegal and potentially dangerous research was being conducted right under everyone's noses. He thought about all the late nights when certain scientists stayed behind, claiming to work on routine projects. He remembered the sealed laboratories that were always off-limits even to security personnel. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward across the table. "Marcus, we need you to think carefully about the past few months. Have you noticed any unusual activity? People working at odd hours? Deliveries that seemed out of place? Scientists who seemed nervous or secretive?" As Marcus searched his memory, details began emerging that had seemed insignificant at the time. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, a senior researcher, had been staying unusually late several nights a week for the past 3 months. She always claimed to be working on data analysis. But Marcus had noticed that she often left through the rear exit rather than the main entrance, which was unusual for someone with her level of clearance. There was also the matter of the mysterious deliveries that had been arriving every other Thursday evening. The shipments were always handled by Dr. Morrison personally, and she had specifically requested that security not inspect these packages, claiming they contained sensitive research materials from a partner institution. I remember now, Marcus said slowly. Dr. Morrison has been acting strangely, and there have been these deliveries that she handles herself. I thought it was just normal research stuff. Dr. Williams and Agent Rodriguez exchanged meaningful glances. Dr. Williams pulled up personnel files on her computer and showed Marcus a photograph of Dr. Morrison. Dr. Morrison disappeared yesterday afternoon, just hours after the evacuation began. She didn't report to the emergency assembly point, and her car was found abandoned at the airport. We believe she may have been conducting unauthorized experiments with materials that could pose a significant threat to public safety. The realization that he had unknowingly been involved in a potential national security incident left Marcus feeling sick to his stomach. He thought about his wife and children at home, about the thousands of people living in the surrounding communities who might be at risk because of activities he had failed to detect. Over the next several hours, Marcus worked with federal investigators to reconstruct Dr. Morrison's activities over the past several months. Security footage was reviewed, access logs were analyzed, and every detail of the mysterious deliveries was scrutinized. What emerged was a picture of a rogue scientist who had been conducting experiments far beyond the scope of her authorized research. The breakthrough came when investigators accessed Dr. Morrison's personal laboratory. Hidden behind what appeared to be routine equipment, they discovered a sophisticated setup designed to create and manipulate radioactive materials in ways that violated numerous international treaties. The laboratory contained isotopes that weren't supposed to exist outside of military applications, and the implications were terrifying. Marcus, Dr. Williams explained as they reviewed the findings, what Dr. Morrison was doing could have led to a catastrophic release of radiation that would have affected hundreds of thousands of people. The fact that you detected those readings, when you did, probably prevented a disaster that would have made Chernobyl look minor by comparison. The weight of this revelation was overwhelming. Marcus realized that his routine morning rounds had accidentally uncovered a plot that could have had devastating consequences. But even more disturbing was the growing realization that Dr. Morrison might not have been working alone. As investigators dug deeper into the facility's records, they discovered financial irregularities that suggested Dr. Morrison had been receiving funding from unknown sources. Bank records showed large deposits to her personal accounts from offshore companies that couldn't be traced. Phone records revealed encrypted communications with individuals whose identities were masked behind sophisticated privacy measures. By late afternoon, the investigation had expanded to include counterintelligence agencies. The possibility that foreign agents had been operating within the nuclear facility sent shockwaves through the federal task force. Marcus found himself being questioned not just about what he had observed, but about his own background, his family, and his potential connections to anyone who might have been involved in the conspiracy. Marcus, we need to consider the possibility that you might be in danger, Agent Rodriguez told him during a private conversation. If Dr. Morrison was working with hostile foreign agents, they might view you as a threat because you uncovered their operation. The idea that he and his family might be targets had never occurred to Marcus. He was just a security guard doing his job. But now he found himself at the center of an international incident that was growing more complex and dangerous by the hour. As evening approached, Marcus looked out at the facility where he had worked, peacefully for 8 years, now surrounded by federal agents and emergency personnel. The building that had once represented job security and routine had become the epicenter of a crisis that threatened national security. He called his wife to check on their family, but couldn't tell her the full extent of what was unfolding. All he could do was assure her that they were safe for now, while privately wondering how long that safety would last. 3 days after Marcus's initial discovery, the situation had escalated beyond anything anyone could have predicted. The small town of Riverside, population 15,000, had been quietly evacuated during the night. Residents woke up to find government officials at their doors, politely but firmly explaining that they needed to leave their homes immediately for their own safety. Marcus stood in the empty town square, watching as the last families loaded their belongings into government-provided buses. The silence was eerie after years of familiar sounds, children playing, cars passing, the normal rhythm of small-town life. Now there was only the hum of generators powering the mobile command centers that had taken over the downtown area. "Marcus, we need to talk," Dr. Williams called out as she approached from the main command tent. Her appearance had changed dramatically over the past few days. The confident scientist had been replaced by someone who looked exhausted and deeply troubled. Inside the tent, Marcus was introduced to Director Catherine Hayes from the Department of Homeland Security. Director Hayes was a tall, imposing woman whose presence commanded immediate attention. Her expression was grave as she gestured for Marcus to sit down across from her. "Mr. Chen, what we're about to tell you is classified at the highest levels of government. The situation we're dealing with goes far beyond a simple radiation leak or even unauthorized research," Director Hayes began. She opened a thick folder and spread several photographs across the table. The images showed what appeared to be sophisticated laboratory equipment, but Marcus couldn't identify most of it. Some pieces looked almost alien in their complexity, with unusual geometric designs and materials he didn't recognize. Dr. Morrison wasn't just conducting unauthorized experiments. She was part of an international network that has been stealing advanced nuclear technology from facilities around the world. What she created in your facility represents a breakthrough in weapons-grade material production that could destabilize global security. Marcus stared at the photographs, trying to process this information. "Are you saying she was building weapons?" "Not exactly building weapons, but creating the materials that could be used to build them. The isotopes she produced are so advanced and concentrated that a small amount could power devices we've only theorized about. The radiation readings you detected were just the beginning of what could have been a catastrophic release." Dr. Williams leaned forward and pointed to one of the photographs. "Marcus, this equipment shouldn't exist according to current scientific knowledge. Somehow, Dr. Morrison gained access to technology that's decades ahead of anything publicly available. We believe she was working with individuals who have resources and knowledge that pose a direct threat to national security." The conversation was interrupted when Agent Rodriguez burst into the tent, his face flushed with urgency. "Director Hayes, we've got a problem. Our satellites have detected unusual radiation signatures at 3 other facilities across the country. It looks like Dr. Morrison's operation was much larger than we initially thought." Director Hayes' expression darkened. "Which facilities?" "The Lawrence National Laboratory in California, the Brookhaven facility in New York, and the Los Alamos complex in New Mexico, all showing similar isotope signatures to what we found here." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. If similar operations were running at multiple facilities, the implications were staggering. Dr. Morrison hadn't been a lone rogue scientist. She had been part of a coordinated effort that had infiltrated some of the most secure nuclear research facilities in the country. "Marcus," Director Hayes said, turning back to him, "we need you to understand something. The radiation signatures you detected suggest that these operations have been active for months, possibly years. This means that whoever is behind this has had access to our most sensitive nuclear research for an extended period." Over the next several hours, Marcus learned details that made him question everything he thought he knew about his job and the facility where he had worked. The unauthorized experiments had been far more extensive than anyone initially realized. Hidden laboratories had been constructed within the existing facility structure, concealed so effectively that even comprehensive security inspections had failed to detect them. The most disturbing revelation came when investigators analyzed the materials that had been produced in Dr. Morrison's laboratory. The isotopes were unlike anything in the scientific literature, suggesting access to research that was classified at levels beyond anything Marcus had clearance to know about. "The technology required to create these materials," Dr. Williams explained, "represents scientific knowledge that should be impossible to acquire through normal channels. We're looking at the possibility that highly classified research has been compromised, potentially going back several years." As evening fell, Marcus received devastating news about his personal situation. Intelligence analysts had determined that his family might have been under surveillance for weeks before the incident. Photographs found in Dr. Morrison's abandoned apartment showed his house, his children's school, and locations where his family regularly went. "Marcus, we're moving your family to a secure location tonight," Agent Rodriguez informed him. "We have reason to believe that Dr. Morrison's associates may view you and your family as potential threats that need to be eliminated. The thought of his wife and children being in danger because of his routine job duties was overwhelming. Marcus had always seen his work as boring, but safe, the kind of job that provided steady income without putting his family at risk. Now, he discovered that his vigilance in detecting the radiation leak had made him and his loved ones targets of an international conspiracy. Later that evening, Marcus was allowed a brief phone call with his wife. Linda's voice was strained as she tried to comfort their children while packing essential belongings for their sudden relocation. "Marcus, the agents won't tell me much, but they say we might not be able to come home for a long time. What exactly is happening? How dangerous is this situation?" "Linda, I can't explain everything right now, but I need you to trust the federal agents completely. Do exactly what they tell you to do. Our safety depends on it." After ending the call, Marcus sat, alone in the empty facility's break room where he had started so many normal workdays. The familiar surroundings felt foreign now, contaminated by the knowledge of what had been happening in the hidden laboratories just floors below where he had drunk his morning coffee. Director Hayes found him there and sat down across from him. "Marcus, I want you to know that your actions likely prevented something catastrophic, but I also need to prepare you for what comes next. This investigation is going to take months, possibly years, to fully resolve. The people behind this operation have resources and connections that make them extremely dangerous. What does that mean for me and my family? It means your life has changed permanently. We can provide protection and eventually help you rebuild elsewhere, but you can never return to the life you had here. The people we're dealing with have long memories and significant capabilities." As Marcus contemplated this reality, he realized that his simple observation of unusual radiation readings had not just uncovered a security breach, it had revealed a threat to national security that would reshape his family's entire future. The quiet security guard who had just wanted to do his job and provide for his family had become an unwitting hero whose discovery would have consequences he was only beginning to understand. 2 weeks had passed since Marcus's family was relocated to a safe house in Colorado, and the investigation had revealed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of international espionage. Marcus found himself living in a reality that seemed borrowed from a spy thriller, except the danger was all too real. The safe house was a modest ranch home in a quiet suburb of Denver, chosen specifically because it looked completely ordinary. Federal agents had created new identities for Marcus and his family, complete with backstories that explained their sudden appearance in the neighborhood. To the outside world, they were the Peterson family, recent transplants from Oregon looking for a fresh start. Marcus had been assigned Agent Sarah Chen as his primary handler. Agent Chen was a seasoned operative who specialized in protecting witnesses in national security cases. She had explained to Marcus that his case was unlike anything she had encountered in her 15-year career. "Marcus, what you uncovered at the Riverside facility was just the tip of an iceberg that we're still trying to understand," Agent Chen told him during one of their daily briefings. "Dr. Morrison was part of a network that has been operating for at least 5 years, possibly longer. The investigation had expanded to include facilities in 12 countries. Intelligence agencies from allied nations were sharing information that painted a picture of a sophisticated operation designed to steal and reproduce the most advanced nuclear technology in the world. The ultimate goal appeared to be the creation of materials that could be used in weapons that would make traditional nuclear devices seem primitive by comparison. The technology they were working with," Agent Chen continued, "appears to be based on research that was supposed to be purely theoretical. Someone has found a way to turn scientific theories into practical applications decades ahead of schedule." Marcus struggled to understand the full implications of what Agent Chen was telling him. "Are you saying that whoever is behind this has access to technology that doesn't officially exist?" "That's exactly what we're saying. The isotopes found in Dr. Morrison's laboratory demonstrate capabilities that our best scientists thought were impossible with current technology. This suggests either a massive breakthrough that was kept secret, or access to research from sources we haven't identified." The most troubling development had occurred just days earlier, when investigators attempted to examine the abandoned equipment in Dr. Morrison's hidden laboratory. When federal agents tried to access the facility, they discovered that the entire underground laboratory had been destroyed. Not damaged or dismantled, but completely vaporized, leaving behind only a perfectly circular crater where the equipment had been. The destruction was so complete and so precise that it had to have been planned, Agent Chen explained. Whoever Dr. Morrison was working with had a fail-safe system that could eliminate all evidence remotely. This level of sophistication suggests resources that go beyond typical criminal organizations. Marcus learned that similar destruction had occurred at the other compromised facilities. In each case, the unauthorized laboratories had been completely eliminated, leaving investigators with no physical evidence of the advanced technology that had been used. It was as if the entire operation had never existed, except for the radiation signatures that Marcus had first detected. The psychological impact of this situation on Marcus and his family was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. His wife, Linda, struggled to maintain normalcy for their 2 children while living under assumed identities. 8-year-old Tommy kept asking when they could go home and see his friends, while 12-year-old Sarah had become withdrawn and suspicious of everyone they met. "Marcus, I need to know how long this is going to last," Linda said during one of their evening walks around the safe neighborhood. "The kids are asking questions I can't answer, and I'm starting to feel like we're prisoners in our own lives." "Linda, I honestly don't know. Agent Chen says the investigation could take years. These people, whoever they are, have resources and connections that make them extremely dangerous. Our safety depends on staying hidden." The strain was evident in Linda's voice as she replied, "I understand the danger, but we can't live like this indefinitely. Tommy is supposed to start Little League next month and Sarah is missing her friends. We had a life, Marcus. A normal, happy life. Meanwhile, the investigation had taken an international turn that added new layers of complexity to an already bewildering situation. Intelligence agencies had identified similar operations in facilities across Europe, Asia, and South America. The scope of the conspiracy suggested coordination at a level that required significant financial resources and political connections. Agent Chen shared these developments with Marcus during their regular security briefings. "We're not dealing with a typical espionage operation. The level of coordination and the advanced technology involved suggests something much more sophisticated than traditional state-sponsored activities." "What do you mean by that?" "Marcus, the technology being used is so advanced that it's possible we're dealing with individuals or organizations that have access to research that's classified beyond anything in public knowledge. Some of our analysts are considering possibilities that would have seemed like science fiction just a few months ago. The most disturbing aspect of these revelations was the growing realization that the conspiracy might extend to individuals within the government agencies that were investigating it. Several key pieces of evidence had mysteriously disappeared from secure facilities, and communication intercepts suggested that someone with high-level clearance was feeding information to unknown contacts. "Marcus, we need to discuss the possibility that your discovery exposed something much bigger than unauthorized research," Agent Chen told him during a particularly serious briefing. "We're beginning to suspect that this operation was designed to achieve something specific, and that the theft of nuclear technology was just one component of a larger plan." "What kind of plan?" "We don't know yet, but the materials that were being produced in these hidden laboratories could theoretically be used to create devices with capabilities that would fundamentally change global power structures. We're talking about technology that could make traditional military advantages obsolete." As these revelations unfolded, Marcus found himself grappling with the realization that his simple job as a security guard had accidentally interfered with what might be the most significant conspiracy of the modern era. The radiation readings he had detected that Tuesday morning had set in motion investigations that were uncovering threats to global security that no one had imagined possible. The weight of this responsibility was becoming increasingly difficult to bear. Marcus had never wanted to be a hero or to play a role in international events. He had simply wanted to provide for his family and live a quiet, normal life. Now he found himself at the center of a situation that could potentially affect millions of people around the world. As he looked out the window of the safe house at the ordinary suburban street where his family was now hiding, Marcus wondered if they would ever be able to return to the simple life they had once taken for granted. The conspiracy he had uncovered was still unfolding, and its ultimate implications remained terrifyingly unclear. 6 months after Marcus first detected those unusual radiation readings, the true scope of the conspiracy began to emerge in ways that defied everyone's expectations. What had started as the discovery of unauthorized nuclear research had evolved into an investigation that challenged fundamental assumptions about science, technology, and global security. Marcus was sitting in the secure conference room of a federal building in Denver when Director Catherine Hayes delivered news that would reshape his understanding of everything that had happened. Across from him sat Dr. Williams, Agent Chen, and several other officials whose presence indicated the extraordinary nature of what they were about to discuss. Marcus, after 6 months of investigation involving intelligence agencies from 14 countries, we've reached some conclusions that are difficult to accept, even with the evidence we've gathered, Director Hayes began. She activated a large display screen that showed a complex timeline stretching back nearly a decade. Dots and lines connected events across multiple continents, creating a web of activity that was both impressive and terrifying in its scope. The network that Dr. Morrison was part of has been active for much longer than we initially suspected. We've traced financial transactions, communications, and personnel movements that suggest this operation began almost 10 years ago. Dr. Williams leaned forward and pointed to several locations on a world map displayed on another screen. Marcus, we've identified coordinated activities at nuclear facilities in 23 countries. The pattern suggests a systematic effort to acquire specific types of research and materials from the most advanced nuclear programs in the world. But here's what we couldn't understand until recently, Director Hayes continued. The technology being developed wasn't just stolen, it was being improved and modified in ways that demonstrate scientific knowledge beyond anything in our current understanding. Agent Chen opened a folder and showed Marcus photographs of devices that had been recovered from one of the compromised facilities before it was destroyed. The equipment looked unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, with geometric patterns and materials that seemed to shimmer with an internal light. Marcus, these devices appear to function according to principles that we don't fully understand. Our best scientists have been studying them for months, and they can't explain how they work, or how anyone could have developed the technology to build them. The implications of what they were telling him slowly began to sink in. Are you saying that whoever is behind this has access to scientific knowledge that's more advanced than anything our government has? That's exactly what we're saying, Dr. Williams replied. The isotopes that were being produced in these facilities demonstrate an understanding of nuclear physics that's decades ahead of publicly available research. But more than that, the methods being used suggest access to theoretical frameworks that most scientists consider purely speculative. Director Hayes activated another display that showed energy readings and mathematical equations that meant nothing to Marcus, but clearly troubled the scientists present. The efficiency levels we're seeing shouldn't be possible with known technology. The devices were producing materials with precision and in quantities that would require industrial facilities, but they were doing it in spaces smaller than your average laboratory. Over the following hours, Marcus learned details that challenged his understanding of reality. The investigation had uncovered evidence of technologies that seemed to operate beyond the limitations of conventional physics. Materials were being manipulated at the atomic level with precision that suggested access to manufacturing techniques that didn't officially exist. Marcus, we need you to understand something that's going to sound impossible, Agent Chen said. The people behind this operation appear to have access to scientific knowledge that's significantly more advanced than anything in our official research programs. The question we're facing is where this knowledge came from. What do you mean? Director Hayes exchanged glances with the other officials before responding. There are several possibilities we're considering. One is that there's a secret research program, possibly international in scope, that has achieved breakthroughs decades ahead of publicly acknowledged science. Another possibility is that this knowledge has been acquired from sources that we haven't identified, Dr. Williams added. Marcus, the mathematical principles governing these devices suggest an understanding of physics that represents a fundamental leap beyond our current theories. This level of advancement typically takes decades of research by thousands of scientists. Yet somehow this network had access to functional technology based on these principles. The most startling revelation came when investigators analyzed the global pattern of activities. The timing and coordination of operations across multiple continents suggested a level of planning and resources that went beyond typical international conspiracies. Marcus, we're dealing with an organization that has capabilities we didn't know existed, Director Hayes explained. They've been able to infiltrate secure facilities, conduct advanced research, and coordinate activities across the globe while remaining completely undetected for years. The technology they were developing appears to have applications that go far beyond traditional nuclear weapons, Dr. Williams added. We're looking at potential capabilities that could affect everything from energy production to space travel to communication systems. As these revelations unfolded, Marcus began to understand that his accidental discovery had exposed something that might represent the most significant development in human technology in generations. The implications were staggering, but equally troubling was the realization that this advanced knowledge was in the hands of individuals whose motives remained completely unknown. Marcus, there's something else you need to know, Agent Chen said. Our investigation has revealed that you weren't the first person to detect unusual activities at one of these facilities. Over the past 5 years, there have been at least 12 other individuals who observed anomalies or raised concerns about unauthorized research. What happened to them? 7 of them died in accidents within months of making their reports. 3 others disappeared entirely. 1 suffered a breakdown and is in psychiatric care. The 12th person is a scientist in Germany who is currently in protective custody like you. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Marcus's quick action and the immediate response of federal agents had likely saved his life and the lives of his family. But it also meant that the people behind this conspiracy had been successfully eliminating threats to their operation for years. The fact that you're alive and that we uncovered this network is largely due to timing and luck, Director Hayes told him. If you had detected those readings just a few days later, after Dr. Morrison completed her work and disappeared, we might never have learned about any of this. As the briefing concluded, Marcus found himself grappling with the realization that his simple observation had accidentally disrupted what might be the most significant technological conspiracy in human history. The advanced knowledge being used by this network could potentially revolutionize human civilization, but it was being developed and controlled by individuals whose ultimate goals remained a mystery. The weight of this knowledge was overwhelming. Marcus had gone from being an ordinary security guard to being one of the few people on Earth who understood the true scope of a conspiracy that could change the future of humanity. And he was beginning to realize that the most shocking revelations might still be ahead. 1 year after Marcus Chen first noticed those amber warning lights on his security monitor, the world changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The aftermath of his discovery had set in motion events that would challenge every assumption about human technology, international cooperation, and the future of civilization itself. Marcus stood in the observation deck of a secure facility in Nevada, looking down at a device that had been built using principles recovered from the investigation. The machine hummed quietly, producing clean energy at levels that made traditional power plants obsolete. It was just one of dozens of revolutionary technologies that had emerged from the scientific breakthrough that followed the exposure of the conspiracy. Director Hayes approached him with a smile, something Marcus had rarely seen during their many serious conversations over the past year. Marcus, I wanted to personally thank you again. Your vigilance that morning didn't just prevent a disaster. It opened the door to the greatest technological advancement in human history. The path to this moment had been extraordinary and often terrifying. After months of investigation, international intelligence agencies had finally tracked down the source of the advanced knowledge that Dr. Morrison's network had been using. The truth was more remarkable than anyone had imagined. The conspiracy had been orchestrated by a group of scientists from around the world who had discovered a cache of research documents hidden in an abandoned facility in Antarctica. These documents, dating back to the 1940s, contained scientific theories and mathematical proofs that were decades ahead of anything in mainstream science. The documents had been left behind by a secret international research project that had been abandoned after World War II. The original scientists involved in the project had made extraordinary breakthroughs in understanding the fundamental forces of nature, but political tensions and the onset of the Cold War had forced them to hide their work and scatter across the globe. Dr. Morrison and her associates had stumbled upon these hidden documents during a legitimate Antarctic research expedition in 2019. Instead of sharing their discovery with the international scientific community, they had formed a secret network to develop the technologies described in the documents for their own purposes. What we discovered, Dr. Williams explained to Marcus during a briefing, was that these scientists from the 1940s had solved problems that we're only beginning to understand today. Their work represented a complete revolution in physics, chemistry, and engineering. The implications were staggering. The advanced technologies that Dr. Morrison's network had been developing could have given them unprecedented power over global energy systems, communications, and even space travel. If they had succeeded in their plans, they could have held the entire world hostage to their demands. But Marcus's accidental discovery had changed everything. Instead of allowing this knowledge to be controlled by a small group of conspirators, governments around the world had agreed to share the recovered research and develop the technologies cooperatively. The results had been nothing short of miraculous. Within months of international cooperation beginning, breakthrough technologies had emerged that solved major global challenges: clean energy systems that made fossil fuels obsolete, medical devices that could diagnose and treat diseases with unprecedented precision, communication systems that could connect every person on Earth instantly and securely. "Marcus, your family can finally come home," Agent Chen told him during their final official meeting. "The people behind the conspiracy have all been captured or neutralized. More importantly, the knowledge they were trying to control is now being used to benefit all of humanity." The town of Riverside had been completely rebuilt using the new technologies. What had once been a small community surrounding a nuclear research facility had become a model city, showcasing the possibilities of advanced clean energy and sustainable living. The residents who had been evacuated were returning to homes that were more comfortable and efficient than anything they had ever imagined. Marcus's family had indeed been able to return home, but their lives had changed in ways that went far beyond their temporary relocation. Marcus had been offered a position with the International Oversight Committee that was managing the implementation of the new technologies. His experience and integrity had made him a valuable asset in ensuring that these powerful capabilities were used responsibly. "Dad, is it true that you saved the world?" his son Tommy asked one evening as they walked through the renovated downtown area of Riverside. The streets were now illuminated by lighting systems that produced no pollution and required no external power source. "I didn't save the world, Tommy. I just noticed something that seemed wrong and reported it." The real heroes were all the scientists and agents who figured out what was really happening and made sure the technology was used to help people instead of hurt them. But even as Marcus downplayed his role, he understood that his simple observation had been the catalyst for the most significant positive change in human history. The clean energy systems were eliminating pollution and providing abundant power to developing nations. Medical breakthroughs were extending healthy lifespans and eliminating diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Communication technologies were bringing people together and enabling cooperation on a global scale that had never been possible before. The world that emerged from the crisis was fundamentally different from the one that had existed before Marcus. Noticed those amber warning lights. International cooperation had replaced competition in scientific research. Environmental problems that had seemed insurmountable were being solved with elegant technological solutions. Poverty and inequality were being addressed with tools that could provide abundance for everyone. Standing in his rebuilt hometown, watching his children play in parks that were powered by limitless clean energy, Marcus reflected on how a routine morning at work had led to such extraordinary changes. The conspiracy that Dr. Morrison had been part of could have led to catastrophe, but its exposure had instead ushered in an era of unprecedented human progress. "Marcus, Linda said as she joined him on their evening walk. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had been just a few minutes later that morning? If you had missed those readings? I try not to think about it, Marcus replied. But I do know that sometimes the most important moments in history come from ordinary people just doing their jobs carefully and paying attention to details. As they walked home through streets that represented humanity's bright new future, Marcus understood that his role as an accidental hero was complete. The world had been changed forever by his vigilance, and the aftermath had proved that even the most dangerous conspiracies could ultimately lead to positive transformation when good people worked together. The radiation readings that had seemed so threatening that Tuesday morning had indeed been a warning, but not the kind anyone had expected. They had been a warning that humanity was on the verge of either its greatest disaster or its greatest triumph. Thanks to Marcus's careful attention to his duties, it had become the latter.